It was a fantastic description of the anatomy of body, and as usual, very highly explained in details from a doctor's point of view and biological point of view.
You're
There are
welcome,
a number
sir.
of.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Um, from the structural point of view, from the magnetic gravitational point, um, as we build on the knowledge week by week, if you go back to the original discussions and explanations to do with the work of the brain, the work of the heart, the work of the lungs, the function and the purpose of the kidney is in fact and totally dependent, and kidney has been developed by the body of the man to support the function of the brain. If we go back to the beginning of the teachings and the explanations, we explained that the purpose of the lung was to convert matter which arrives in a gans state to energy, plasmatic energy, as a gravitational magnetic field. As I repeat again, when we speak in the terminology of the plasma, we're speaking about gravitational and magnetic field, not just a magnetic field or energy as is the terminology used normally. So the lungs convert the matter which enters as a gas into energy, which this energy in turn is absorbed and partially, as we explained last time, stored in the liver as for only to be delivered to the brain. As we explained from the beginning, the lymphs are the feeding part of the physicality, and the blood is the feeding part of the energy to the brain, which is the emotional part of it. The job of kidney is exactly the reverse. Whatever energy which has been delivered by the lung to the blood and used and sent to the brain, and by the emotional part and the physical part of the brain used, and whatever which is not used, which is not needed, goes back to the blood, then this energy, plasmatic form, if it's not needed in the blood circulation, is delivered to the liver. If it can be stored, it's kept there, and then it's delivered to the kidneys to be filtered out, that there is more space in the form of energy availability that it can be absorbed by the blood when it goes back to the lung to be charged up or to be filled up to go to the brain. So, as Dr. Elia explained as well, the structure of the kidney is a copy structure of the lung in reverse. Lung converts the matter into energy in a plasmatic form for the blood to be taken to the brain. And once this energy is not needed, or there is a surplus, or there is lower in the strength than the brain needs, comes back to the kidney, and then this energy in a plasmatic magnetic field form, added to the energetic magnetic field form of the matters, like potassium, calcium, or whatever, converts the gans state of the matter into the matter, and then is discharged into the bladder. So one of the mysteries of how gans converts back to become a matter to be discharged is, as Dr. Elia explained, all the filtering and everything else, but in fact is by the addition of the emotional energy which is not needed in the blood, which in the confinement of the nano layers of the piping and tubings of the kidney convert the gans into a matter state and it gets discharged into the bladder. In the teachings of the energy development and other parts of the technology, if you have understood by now, you can convert the gans into a matter by increasing or adding or taking gravitational magnetic field, plasmatic field to it. When you produce gans, when you put 2 plates in a container, you take the energy out and you light a LED light or whatever. You release the gans. But if you want to release the gans back to a nano state and back into a matter, you have to put that energy back. That's how a state of energy, gans, converts back itself into matter state, through gravitational magnetic field energy. And this energy is supplied by the blood from the surplus of what is not needed by the brain. So, as liver, if you look at the structure of the liver and the structure of the kidney, you see it's exactly the same. It's got cavities, it's got certain shapes that creates a gravitational magnetic field as in a surplus to be stored or kept and at the same time to be added to the matter to become, to the gans of the matter to become matter to be discharged. This is the way of the conversion. Go back on understanding of the intestine when we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. No food ever passes the layers of the intestine. No potassium ever passes. It's the gravitational magnetic field of the whatever you digested passes the wall, adds to the lymph, and it stays in that state. And as we explained, in the intestine, every section has a different nano-layer coating, a compression or pressure, that is magnetic gravitational, which allows extraction of certain materials from what is going through it. The same is the same with the pipes within the kidney. The pipes, which Dr. Elia explained, this is the part where the sodium is extracted, this is the part where chloride is extracted or whatever, it's the same process. All the pipes within the structure of the body of the man, even the pipes in the kidney, are nano-coated. And each nano-coating is like a copper nano-coated or zinc nano-coated or the rest, have gravitational magnetic field, different gravitational. This is what we explained in the Chinese session today. So, these nano layers, these conditions in the pipes, in the walls of these tubes, create gravitational magnetic fields which extracts like sodium or potassium. And this is how the material works and how the system works. Understanding that every tube is nano-layered. Dr. Elia explained about the sliding, that how they slide or they push. The sliding should have been very clear to all of you by now how it happens. As all the organs, all the pipes, all the tissues, even the skin of a muscle is made of the gans material, we've seen in our nanotechnology that 2 nanowires cannot be welded. They slip against each other because Coulomb's barrier does not allow it. These are magnetic plates. Very much like a monotrail in trains in Japan. There are magnetic field sheets that they can never come in touch with each other. But as they rub with each other, they release energy. It's like the energy of the sun and the earth. When they rub against each other, create light on the upper atmosphere and the heat. So the sliding of the organs in the whole structure of the body is due to the nanostructure and gans structure of the material. Then you understand why kidney works the way it is. It's not the reverse osmosis. It's actually each nano layer part of the tubing has specific gravitational magnetic field which tunes to a specific material. In the last question, somebody asked, what about CO, monoxide, carbon monoxide? The reason the man dies because of carbon monoxide is that in our kidneys, there is no nanolayer section which can extract CO. If we put or adopt a section in the pipe that can create gravitational magnetic field of carbon monoxide, the body will extract it like everything else. But in the process of evolution, we have never allowed this to happen. So the body cannot extract this material, the blood becomes saturated of it, and that's what it leads to death, because the carbon becomes diamond structure in the blood and it creates a resistance that nothing else can be added. If you go to this understanding of the behavior of the carbon and oxygen, you create a diamond structure which cannot touch to it, and at the same time it does not absorb energy, and therefore the death is very fast. In the carbon monoxide, the physicality dies after the emotional part, because the emotional part does not receive the energy it needs, which gets from the blood. So its gravitational magnetic field bypasses or surpasses of the energy of the what you call the physical part, and it blocks itself and disconnects itself from physicality. The destruction is not the plan. It's just that in our body, in our kidneys, if we had a section which was nano-layered and its gravitational magnetic field was of CO, we would have withstood CO2. This is the same system as poisoning. In poisoning, in our tubes, we don't have facility for conversion or extraction of nanolayers in the strength of the poison. In the coming time, these systems will be developed. You don't need to take anti-poison. Only thing is, you have to create a filter which stands gravitational magnetic field of the poison. So you measure the strength of the poison in the blood, and that's all it needs to be done. If it's the same and you have it, you don't get harmed. As they say, cobras never bite each other, because both carry the same strength poison. A cobra bites anything else, they die, because they don't have that high power energy material, what we call poison. They fight physically to show their domination, but they never, in the process of fighting, bite each other, because it has no effect. It's the same with the body of the man. If we allow our body to have or behave or add a part to it, it can be filtering anything. This goes back again why a lot of us goes back on dialysis machine. In the coming time, Keshe Foundation has done some research on this field, where we mimic and create gravitational magnetic field of the materials which are in the blood. So the system, as it goes through, it transfers everything back, transforms it across the system into the machine. You don't need to go and put injections or needles and do the transfer. You can make system gravitational magnetic field which do the filtering. In space there is a need for such a thing, and that's why we teach it, and that's why we done research on it. If you look at the structure of the kidney, the structure of the kidney is a replication and copy exactly of the brain. Because brain depends on kidney to make sure It cleans out the energies, plasmatic magnetic field energies in the blood system that it can survive. And this is why kidney is one of the few organs which has its brain sitting on top of it. You call it the renal gland, as Dr. Elia showed us. Glands are part of the brain system control. And that's why it sits on top of it. It's such a crucial operation that it needs its own gland, which means the brain does not trust the physicality to do the job. It's a substation from the master, which is the emotional part. And that's why each section has its own control. And if you look at the structure and you cut it through, you see the shape of the brain and the shape of the kidney. Exactly the same. The reason being is that each layer of kidney, as you go from outside to inside, it's a copy of the gravitational magnetic field, the strength, structure of the brain. Each layer is responsible for a certain strength to extract. Not necessarily the material, but extract the material in conjunction with plasmatic magnetic field energy in the blood, that they can use those to mix it with the matter in the gans state to become a matter that it can be extracted from the body. So in the future, when doctors and scientists look at the structure of the brain and look at the structure of the kidney, they will see matching point to matching point. Which part of the kidney extracts which energy from which part of the brain. And you find out it goes exactly the same inside out. Because even the curvature is important. Because that curvature creates, like your reactors, half-dome reactors, a specific gravitational magnetic field in the whole structure from the center to outside. And the energies which are used by the emotional part are much more stronger and finer in the strength, very spread. So you need that to be done in the center of the kidney. On the arms and legs, outer shoulders and the fingers are operated and controlled on the outer boundary of the brain. And that process of the energy extraction is done on the outer boundary of the kidney too. You have a left and a right, the same as the brain. Each kidney is responsible for operation of one side of the brain. And if one fails, it has the capability to support the two. Because that's why it has a totality figure of the brain. It's not halfway cut. I have written papers, I've given discussions about the operation of kidneys. Nobody should be on dialysis machine and nobody should die of a kidney failure. Once now we understand the operation of the gans and the gans, in a very simple form, you can add machines, you don't need to go to the kidney. I can add a machine onto the arm where the major blood vessels pass, or the leg, and create the extraction from the skin. It works, I have tested on it, and it's very feasible. And in the near future, we show such operation here in Italy. All we need is to create the gravitational magnetic field and conversion to the matter state once it's out, that you can extract it. The operation of the kidneys is the same way controlled by the operation of the lung. Because each lung has connection to each kidney in what is delivered and what is expected to come back and how much has been delivered. And this is job of the renal glands on top of the kidney. in very much is a non-neural connection, plasmatic gravitational magnetic field. These glands sense, receive what has come in and what is on its way and what is expected to be done for the kidney to be ready to adjust for itself to extract on arrival. They don't wait till arrive. They are programmed what is on its way, what has been absorbed, what is come in, and the balance to come out. So, in so many ways, the body of the man will never exist if there was no kidney. Because the function of kidney is not to extract materials. If it was supposed to extract materials, we would have never happened because our body has not the capability to reject gans in a liquid state as is in the blood. The conversion only happens from the gans to the matter to the liquid when the energy from the brain, emotional part and physical part through the blood are delivered in a specific condition in conjunction with the creation of nanomaterials in the tubes to convert the gans into matter. It's a reversal of what you do in your plates. You have the plates, you create a salt, you produce gans. Now you receive the gans, you have to convert it back into the matter that you can dispose of it. And in the future, when the scientists test, not all the material in the urine is rejected as a matter. It's partially rejected in the gans state, especially nitrogen. Nitrogen, majority of it, even though it looks like a what do you call matter state, is mainly in the gans state. The pressure is an important condition for changing the gans into a matter state. The same thing happens in the bigger intestine. In the bigger intestine, when the pressure is built up, this converts the gans into a gas, and what we pass as a wind. And that's why even in the body of the man, in a bladder, you get the bladder pressure. The pressure is in that point when the gans comes in and changes part of the material into the gas state. But it's a controlled how much to create the pressure that you can pass the urine out of the body. It's a controlled pressure system. It's exactly the same. And that's why you feel the pressure, because the gas in the gans state converts itself into a gas, into the nano state, and now that's physical. You feel it and you have to go. And it releases itself in a conversion in energy, which is like electric conversion in the energy state of the plasmatic to the brain that the bladder is full. The whole process has to be understood. If we had no brain, we would have had no need for a kidney. In so many ways, the composition and the structure of the kidney, as we've seen with Dr. Elia, is a copy of the brain and is a copy of the lung and a copy of the liver, because all four of them have one job: use of plasmatic magnetic field energy, not solid state. And in cases, one converts one to one, and in some cases, one stores the other one, and vice versa. And as it was shown, these four organs are born and brought up together at the same time, because from the beginning, one needs the other to do. Even as a fetus, when it starts growing, the kidney and the liver and the lung which appears, they need each other to be able to function, otherwise it cannot be done. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kesh. There is a question from live stream. Mr. Kesh once said diabetes is related to pressure of blood vessel in the kidney. how is it related? Mr. Kesh,
What?
please give us
Diabetic.
more on that. Yes, about diabetes, diabetic, and how that's related to the pressure of the blood vessels in the kidney. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Diabetic, yes, no problem. Diabetic, the diabetes, first of all, it's controlled by the glands above the kidney. But diabetic is emotional condition, and that's why diabetic is connected to the blood. Diabetic 1 is when the fetus in the womb of the mother is under pressure, psychological or psychologically. So when the child is born, the energy which is put into the kidneys and into the brain filters or changes a parameter inside the body, which leads in the later stages to misfunctions or what you call as a diabetic. If you follow any even diabetic 2, is caused through psychological pressures. When it's psychological pressure, you get diabetic. When it's physical pressure, you get high blood pressure. And at the same time, when it's a mixture of the two, you get cholesterol. Because you understood how cholesterol is created. It's amino acid in conjunction with, as you see, the gans. You create a condition in the wall of your blood vessels, and that leads with the solidification of the matter inside the in the blood vessels, and it leads to what you call into cholesterol. Now we understand the full process. When you are physical pressure, physically cannot accept, you end up with high blood pressure. When it's a psychological pressure or not accepting it, it leads to diabetic. And diabetic 1 is when the mother at the point of pregnancy, especially in the final stages of 6 to 8 weeks, is under psychological pressure. Or the child feels in the womb of the mother is threatened by his birth, that he might not be born, because now he has control of his own life. Diabetic, if the doctors research deep into it, diabetic 1 is associated with the passage through the final stage from the mother into life. When the passage is too tight, the pressure comes that the child in the passage gets the feeling of will not be born, the fear, the energy which puts in to make sure it will survive the passage creates a shortage in the body that later on we see it as diabetic. You find, if you go into the detail of the structure of the birth, the children which have the umbilical cord tightened around their neck at the time of birth, majority of them at the age of 12, when it comes to the time 11, 12, when they go from a girl, especially girls for example, from a little girl to a woman through puberty, and they don't want to go through that change, you get diabetic functions showing itself. Because it's another process of change of survival. If the mother's life through a stress, fighting in the house, goes to the point that the mother wishes or puts a pressure on the womb that I wish the child wasn't there, I could do something else, and she's honest to write what she's done, you'll find out the child becomes diabetic 1. Then diabetic 2 comes through the emotional strength later on. That's why we say diabetic 2 at the ages when you're grown up or you become adult. Because then your emotional energies cannot be processed by the kidneys. And the pressure, what we call plasmatic gravitational pressure in the kidney, does not allow the conversion. And then you end up with all the insulins and everything else which goes with it, and the other organs and the brain parts of the body, what we call glands, come into operation to do all sorts of things. We have seen 40% reduction in the use of insulin within 2 weeks. When, through the system we developed, we can handle the emotional part of the brain. And we've seen up to 80% reduction over 12 months. But if the anxiety and the point of the stress comes back in, you see an increase, and then as normal. We have had cases with the COPD where after a while, because when you have a COPD, you're psychologically always under pressure that you die, and you don't want to accept the death through that pressure. Most of these conditions leads to a diabetic and use of insulin, and we've seen that after 4 or 5 months they even forget they have an insulin, what do you call it, injections. And even doctors, when they measured it, there is no need for it because everything is eradicated, because now psychologically they see the process they use with us as a salvage for the life, that this life is saved, so the insulin use just disappears. We had a number of cases like this. And it's literally what we call pressure is gravitational magnetic, is a plasmatic pressure, not the pressure as you consider with pumping. And that pressure comes because different composition of strength are released by the emotional part of the brain, which cannot be used, or there is no filtering for it in the kidney, the same as what you call the CO. And that build up of pressure does not allow certain conversions, and then the other part of the organs of the body have to accommodate for what we use the insulin balance. Next question. We can go home now. There's no questions.
I don't have too much on the live stream right now. There was a question, can we extract carbon monoxide using the CO2 kits but with different metals?
No, unfortunately. In a way, yes, possible, but it has to be done in a different way.
If you use the concentrated carbon monoxide environment to start with, you might be able to pull it easier into the solution.
No, it has a different gravitational magnetic field. It has a 28, not 42.
So they're saying by using different metals in the kit, could one?
In a way, yes, you can. This is part of the extraction technology. You can do it.
There's
Now
also people convert the carbon monoxide to usable fuels now, is the idea too, through certain processes
you have
using
the
oxides.
you have the GANs material to be able to convert it. If you convert it, you can do what you like with it. It's a much powerful but weaker chain than what do you call it, sugar bond, CH bond. The reason for it is that both of the C and O originally were created from nitrogen in the upper atmosphere of the Earth. So they have a common bond. And that's why once you get them together, you can't break them. Because the common bond in the energy transfer, one is, you actually create nitrogen. When you put a balanced position, you have a what you call a nitrogen in between. You have a carbon 12, nitrogen 14, and oxygen 16. And that's why the bond, gravitational magnetic field bond, is so strong, because you can break it. It's very easy to break it. All you need to do is to add a nitrogen or a hydrogen into the system. But you can extract it in a very easy way. Any other question?
Anything on the Skype call or the